Hey, so how's it going, John?
Hey, it's going real well. Good to, good to talk to you.
Yeah, you as well. So I've been sort of learning about Reaper. I mean, I've known about it for a long time. I've used it before. In fact, fun fact, we use Reaper at Drumforge to do some really complicated stuff with samples because we've tried, Pro Tools workflow, we tried a whole Cubase workflow, and we tried all these different DAWs, and none of them could really do sort of the robustness of what Reaper can do when it comes to really technical oriented stuff like bouncing down samples and having naming conventions and all kinds of crazy stuff like that. But I've
Yeah,
never really,
Reaper's a really common choice for sample library makers and game audio studios and things like that.
yeah, they were using it for was it Guitar Hero or Band or what was it? Rock Band. I think it was
I think
Rock.
pretty sure Rock Band, possibly both of them,
Yeah,
actually. But there's tons of games like uh, Dragon Age and there's a bit of the Call of Duty games. Um, a little bit of Rockstar games. I've used it. A lot of the Ubisoft games, like Far Cry series, a lot of that is done in Reaper, like all the dialogue editing, a lot of the sound design stuff. So
yeah,
very popular for sound designers and sample
exactly.
library
And
creators.
audio production, I mean, on an advanced scale, when you're doing that kind of stuff for multimedia and not just, spitting out a WAV file at the end of the day, I think it comes in handy. It's very developer friendly.
Yeah.
But I was gonna say, like, I've never used it for audio production, say recording a band. And I know there's a lot of people out there doing it. And so that's what I kind of want to dig into is like, how do I get in there? How do I do the slip editing? How do I tune the vocals, how to, all these different workflow things that I've become so accustomed to in Cubase and how it works in Cubase and all of that. Like transferring all of that over to Reaper is mind-boggling to me so far.
Yeah, there's a steep learning curve. I'd say it's like you found in the previous video, it's not beginner friendly, and it took me quite a long time to get going with it myself. So I was very fluent with Pro Tools, but really discontent with that company and everything. So, but Cubase didn't work for me. Logic didn't work for me. Sonar and anything else didn't work for me. Even in Reaper, I really disliked at first, but then I found some people that would help me out, and then as once I got my first drum editing job done with that, I realized how much more powerful it is because my project didn't slow down at all. I could work on my crappy old laptop and do everything like, with minimal hardware and software, and it would just, never slow down on me. And Pro Tools, it was like I was thinking of investing like big money in super fast hard drives and all this stuff just because it was so inefficient with handling, 10,000 edits in a project. It just wasn't working at all for me. So yeah, so Reaper was like, it basically saved my life. But yeah, there's a lot of things that need to be set up because I don't think that the defaults make a lot of sense for someone that is coming from another DAW. Things like the way the files are named, the media folder, backup settings, peak files, those sorts of things. So we could go through those in your setup and get you going so that you don't run into any of the kind of really basic issues that a lot of people, and even today I've helped like 3 or 4 people with with really basic stuff that they should have changed on day one. They just you know didn't know about it. So
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's basically what I need to do, because when I made the video previously talking about Reaper and how it applies to beginners, it was just sort of me kind of stumbling through the software as I think a lot of beginners actually end up doing it the first time they download it. They kind of click around and try to figure it out. And I know, I got a little bit of backlash on that video because I'm such a proponent of, read the manual. And of course, I didn't read the manual when it came to Reaper, but I feel like it just blasts you with so many options and preferences and customizations that it's like kind of hard to
Yeah,
stomach all that at once.
it's definitely overwhelming, and some of there's a lot of things that should be intuitive that aren't, and it's just a matter of a preference flip that usually gets that sorted out. So
That's cool.
yeah.
So let's dive in and see if we can figure this out. So the very first thing that drives me nuts is if my mouse is right here and I scroll up and down. I'm on a laptop on a
Yeah.
MacBook, and I'm
Mhm.
doing the up and down scroll motion, and it's zooming in and out.
Yeah, it should go down the track list.
Yeah.
It should scroll vertically. Yeah. So okay. So press Shift question mark.
Okay.
That'll bring up the action list, and this is everything that um, mouse wheel, keyboard, and MIDI controllers can link to.
Okay.
So if you type in, actually click on Find Shortcut, and you should be able to just swipe like the same motion, and it'll come up to that setting. Where to go?
There it
Yeah,
is.
zoom horizontally. So we're just going to see down where it says shortcuts for selected action. Click on where it says mouse wheel, and just delete that. So we've removed mouse wheel from zoom horizontally. But then what we actually want this to do is scroll vertically. So go to the filter, top left,
Okay.
and just type in scroll vertically. Okay, so we've got, so there's a couple different ones, and it kind of depends on each person's system, whether you need the vertically reversed or normal. Well, let's try the first one there. Scroll vertically, and then click on add, and then swipe the mouse wheel and click OK. And you can go ahead and try that now in the arrange view, see if that works.
Ooh.
So if that's working opposite direction for you, then you can try the other one, scroll vertically reversed.
Right. It's perfect so far. So
Okay. So then, and swiping left and right, that's going left and right as expected.
yes.
Cool. Yeah. So that's the other thing, like scrolling vertically, scrolling horizontally, and then zooming is the next one. Probably want to change. So I've always liked Alt mouse wheel,
Okay.
zooming in and out. That's pretty much going to be a universal thing in most software is going to have that kind of by default, but it's a bit different in Reaper. So let's just by default it's mouse wheel on its own. So if you just type in zoom, not vertically, it's zoom horizontal. And
We'll try it horizontally. There we go.
yeah. So try click on add, and then Alt mouse wheel. Yeah.
This key is already mapped to the action scroll horizontally. Override it.
I would override that. Yeah.
Okay.
So give that a try, and it should zoom closer. If it's working backwards, then there's the other one reversed.
Right. Yeah, backwards. So
Yeah, so just go to the next one, and you don't have to delete it first because we can always override it.
Okay.
But yeah, same thing. Option mouse wheel. Okay, override.
There we go.
Yeah. So so there's also a setting for where it will zoom to, like the center position for zooming.
Uh-huh.
I don't remember what Cubase uses, but I think it's like zooming to the mouse.
Yep, to wherever your pointer is.
Okay, so that's a global settings, so that's going to be in preferences. So you can press Command comma to go to preferences, or yeah. So then that would probably be that would probably be.
Should we find it?
Editing behavior mouse. Yeah, you can definitely use that search box. I wish more software had had a search box like
I
that.
agree. That is one good thing about the preferences window in Reaper
Yeah,
is you can search for
there's
stuff.
so many preferences, but you can actually search them. So there's a mouse wheel targets window under cursor. That's normal. Um, but I think this setting is not. If you just search for mouse, it'll come up with something.
Yeah, it's just these two windows, I think.
Try editing behavior.
Like search for, oh, here.
Yeah. Horizontal zoom center, you want that to be
Mouse cursor.
so edit cursor, center view, S cursor. Yeah, there are lots of different options there.
Okay,
Yeah.
so mouse cursor is probably what I'm talking about here. So if I put my mouse over here on the left-hand side and hold down Option and scroll my mouse wheel, it zooms into that, which is useful because you can kind of move to, let's say you're like going to this part of the song and you're not really sure which drum hit it is because you can't really see the difference between the drum hits, but you can get close enough, and as you get getting closer and closer and closer, you're like, oh, it's this hit, so you move your mouse over there,
Yeah.
and yeah, that's super useful. So
Yeah. I think my preference is at the edit cursor, and I just click where I want first.
yeah,
But like it's totally personal preference. Then so it looks like you've zoomed out super far.
yeah, how did I do that? Oh crap, that's crazy that you can do that.
Yeah,
uh
there's no limit to the end of the project. So let's go to action list again. So shift question mark to
okay,
I'll just find you Zoom project. So yeah, type in Zoom project. And so the default is command page down.
I'm on
But
a laptop, so that's hard to get to.
yeah, option A is what I would use.
Okay, I would do, what about Z? On Cubase I use, let's see, how would I do that in Cubase? In Cubase, what I would do is I would select all of the audio, and then I would hit P. And what that does is it just like puts locators from the left, very beginning of the audio to the very end of the audio. And then I would press another button to zoom to the locators.
Okay, so so there's a different action that would do the same thing without the locators.
Okay,
So yeah, just go back to the action list for a second, and then just run the action and see if it's doing like
sure.
zoom out project should show you everything
Okay, so
without changing selections or anything
so
like
just
that.
hit run, and then yeah, that's
Yeah.
cool.
So there is another one that would do to the selected time, and that's called zoom selection, zoom time selection, and that's going to be very similar because your time selection is for the full length of the song.
I see.
But if you have a smaller time selection, it's going to just instantly zoom to that. So
And if you're doing a whole album in one Reaper session, you probably wouldn't want zoom out project unless you really want that macro event, you know.
yeah, yeah. So anyways, I use zoom out project quite a lot. I have that on option A, but P would be a good one for that as well. If you have a whole album in one project, you're going to have a lot of regions, probably a region for each item. Sorry, a region for each song,
Mm-hmm.
and that would enable you to just double click on a region, and then you could hit like Command E or something like that to zoom to time selection.
Okay.
So,
So maybe I'll do option P for project, and then option or command P for time selection.
sure.
That's how I would probably do it. Zoom. Just be command P. Okay, so option P, command P. Cool.
Yeah, so make a smaller time selection. And that's something that you had some trouble with in the other video.
Right.
So if you left drag on an empty area of a track or in the ruler, it'll make a time selection without selecting any items. You can also right drag anywhere, not in the ruler.
Okay.
But
Oops.
yeah, you can two-finger drag should make a time selection. Yeah, so it's more of a marquee selection. So you can, oh, well, there we go. So there's something that comes up in the defaults that we could change. So if you want that to also set the time selection, there's a preference for that. And that's the way I've worked for years, so long that I almost forgot that it's not not the default.
Yeah.
But I love being able to right drag over items and time and select them both at the same time.
Okay.
So there's a preference for that. If you hit Command comma to go to the preferences, it is, oh, it's right there. There's link loop points to time selection, and there is, yeah, so link loop points to time selection should be on. And then there is also in mouse modifiers. So mouse modifiers is anything that left and right click and middle click does for
Okay.
and dragging. So we want arrange view, right drag, and default action would be, so double click where it says behavior, marquee select items. And so we want that to be also set time selected. Yeah. So once you know, you're already getting the hang of this. You know that once you get to the right page, it's easy to find. So
Okay. I see.
once you get used to this, it's going to be really hard to go back to not using right click for making time selections in any other program.
Right.
So it's such an underused mouse modifier. But yeah, so you can left drag in any empty area or in the ruler, or you can right drag over items in time to make time selections. So if you hit that and then you hit Option P, I think you had it, that will zoom to that selection.
Yeah. Cool.
All right. So I know that Cubase had G and H for horizontal zoom as well. So we could set that up.
That would be great.
That's in different steps. So again, in the action list.
Oops.
Edit that out. So it would be zoom in horizontal. Yeah, zoom in horizontal. So there's a bunch of defaults there, plus and equals and up. I mean, you may as well just use what you're used to. I think if you use G and H a lot, just set those.
Yeah. It's funny because I don't even know what G does and what H does. I just know that the two go in and out. So
yeah, I think
click
H
one and I'm like,
I think H is in and
okay. So H.
So we're gonna probably override some of the default settings here.
Okay. Zoom out horizontal would be G.
Yeah. So that's gonna override grouping, but
that's okay.
You can always change that to Command G to make groups. Let's just do that while we're looking at it, maybe.
Okay.
And we'll do that next. So
group.
Group item or item group.
Group item grouping group items.
Yeah.
Okay. That would
add that to Command G.
Yeah.
And then so override that. And then item grouping, remove items from group. I would change that to Command U. It's right below. Yeah.
And then remove view.
Yeah, we'll probably use that for something else.
Cool.
So I'm a big fan of using Z, X, C, and V for undo, cut, copy, and paste.
Oh, nice.
That's like a Pro Tools thing, but yeah, it makes a big difference. So just if you type in undo, you can change that to Z, and you can leave the default Command Z because you're probably going to hit that anyways. Like it'll just You
I
want them
see.
both to be available.
Right.
Yeah, but just having the single key works really well. I found anyways. Undo, and then there's cut, be cut items. Well, there's actually cut items. Where is it?
A couple different ones here.
Yeah, it's the second one there. Cut items, tracks, envelope points, depending on focus. Yeah, so just add in also X for that. And there is another one that I use within time selection.
Is it cut or still cut? Yeah.
The one just above that.
This one?
Because you can have it so that it kind of depends on what you find you actually use a lot. So whether if you make a time selection around an item or a section of an item and you hit X, do you want that to cut the whole item or just that selected area? And so that would be that highlighted one if you want that. If you want it to be just the whole item, then it would be the one ignoring time selection.
So if I clicked on, let's say I clicked on this and I hit cut, I expect this whole item to come out.
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah, that
Okay.
does right thing.
So if you
I wouldn't want to like have it just do that part or anything. I would want the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, there are times when you do need that selected area to be cut as well, though.
Yeah. Well, if I did that though, what I would do is probably a slower way, which would be like
split at the time selection.
Yeah.
First. Yeah. Something you can do is actually like I think it's a control drag. No, it's a command drag in the selected area, and that will split out that area. Like, yeah, and then command drag and just drag it down. It'll create a new track.
Oh, well,
just that selected area. So that's one kind of cool way to do it. But there is also time selection.
Something that's weird to me. Let me see here. I'm trying to figure out how this would behave in Cubase. So in Cubase, you would be able to sort of like press a button or click on a button somewhere on here, and then it would change your mouse from a pointer to a cursor. See how it's a cursor here?
Yeah.
But when I go over audio, it's not a cursor.
Yeah. So it's basically like how Pro Tools has the Smart tool, where depending on the context, it's going to change behaviors.
Yeah. Except you can, in Pro Tools, you can have the Smart tool, which will then turn your mouse into context, or turn everything into context sensitive. So it's like, hover over here.
So that's always on by default in Reaper.
Right.
Basically, mouse cursor position is going to choose or determine what the left click is going to do.
My question would be,
you can kind of override it by hitting a keyboard shortcut.
Okay.
So if you want specific tools, there is a way to do that as well.
Okay.
Where like every left click will do a cut, that sort of thing.
Right.
Or I mean a split.
So
yeah, so you can kind of set up. But that's not like the default way. So you wanted so you wanted like the cursor, the I bar type thing, but that's just going to be your right drag instead of left drag. So that's always available.
Oh, okay. So like if I want to just grab this little word right here,
yeah,
I do that, and then I would, or this is a guitar part, not a vocal, but whatever, and then hold command and drag down. Okay.
Yeah, so that's one way to duplicate that part onto a new track. But you could also drag it horizontally. Yeah, drag it horizontally, and you'll make a copy of that section.
Like this. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how can I do it with left drag? Because the right drag is a little tough for this kind of thing. At least for me, it is.
On a trackpad, yeah, just editing on a trackpad in general is kind of rough. But if you wanted to do It'd probably have to be a edit a mouse modifiers so that we have like maybe hold shift or something like that, shift left drag or option shift left drag to change to setting time selection instead of doing the right drag.
Uh-huh.
Is that what you mean?
Or is there a way to just press a button and now my mouse is just a text cursor until I undo that mode? Like, can I put it into a mode so that the mouse is always just doing time selections on left drags and then turn it off and now it's not doing that? Is that a possible thing to do?
I think we can set that up. It's a little bit involved for this sort of video.
Okay.
But basically it's called an armed action. And we would be arming the action to change the default mouse modifier and then having it toggle between two different modes. So it's kind of like it's an action that changes the preferences.
Okay.
So it's a little more advanced.
We can stick with the right drag for now. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's right drag, or you can add in something like option shift left drag could do something like that as well. If you want to go to the preferences and check in mouse modifiers. So we got mouse modifiers open. So we would go to probably be the track context. And let's see, left drag. And so select time is the default. That's an empty track. So there's
It would be item.
Yeah,
item, right?
Media item. I think I've never set up mine this way.
Yeah, because then it says move item, ignoring time selection.
Yeah.
And you could change it to like, how do you do it? Oh, there. You could change it to select time, maybe, or set time
Yeah,
select.
but then you wouldn't be able to move an item at all.
Yeah. Okay.
So you just want it to be like, yeah, on some sort of probably 2-finger modifier, like option control or something like that.
Yeah.
You mentioned slip editing earlier.
Yeah.
And so that option move item contents, you see move item contents is the one that's for slip editing.
Yeah.
And I think that's very much like Cubase.
Yes. And I do mine so fast that I don't know exactly what keys I press.
Yeah, but it's basically, you hit S to split and then you option drag to slide the contents without changing the endpoints.
So on Cubase, it would be, I'm thinking it through now. I would hold option to basically take, when you hold option in Cubase, you're telling Cubase, I want my mouse to be a knife. So
Okay.
Holding option, now my mouse is a knife. Wherever I click, it's going to cut. And then while holding option still, and then holding shift as well, that tells Cubase, I want to turn my mouse into a hand that can grab audio and move it within events. So It's just, you're holding Alt and you're clicking to cut, and then you hold down Shift and then you drag it, and that does the slip editing. Then you let go of Shift and you click again, then you hold down Shift and then you move. So you can go like this really quickly.
Okay, so the Reaper way is even faster.
Okay.
You could do it without the keyboard at all.
Nice.
So like I'm often pressing S, like to make a split where the cursor is, but you could make it so that you don't even have to click first to move the cursor. You can just press S, and it'll split under the mouse.
So that's the part that's hard for me because I am so used to doing it all with my right hand, on the mouse. Like I don't want to have to press a key, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And so the other way is again an armed action, but it's pretty simple. The simple way is just to add in split items as a toolbar item, a toolbar button, and you just right click it. And then anytime you left click, it's going to run an action.
Okay.
So that's essentially that's your basic tool. So instead of having the context sensitive like position of the mouse doing everything. Whenever you left click, it's going to make a split there. But you can still hold down Option and drag and slip the contents of the item.
Okay. So how would we do that? Is that hard to do?
Not at all. So, but we could also kind of do this in mouse modifiers. Now that I'm thinking of it, if we go to the context media item left click, and I don't know, you're used to Options, so we could do that, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, so replace select item ignoring grouping with, let's see, split isn't one of the default ones, but we could easily do that. So go to action list at the bottom and just type in split. And we want not that one. Now, down at the bottom, split items at edit or play cursor. I think that one will work.
Okay.
So where things kind of get tricky is when you want it to actually change the selection. So when you split an item and you want to slip it, you want to make sure that only the right side of the split item. So split items at edit cursor select right is what I would do. Just the one above that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So hit select on this now.
Yep. Or select and close.
Okay.
Okay, and then hit apply. And that should be active now. Anytime you Option click, that will, yeah.
There we
So
go.
there you go.
So let's see. Let me find something rhythmic here. How would this is where it gets okay? I guess I would just do that. And then how can I zoom waveforms?
That's shift up arrow.
Okay. So now I can just hold Option, click, drag, and that's like editing drums, slip editing drums right there.
Yeah.
And when it's moving here, is it moving by samples or milliseconds or?
Well, basically your resolution is going to be depending on how zoomed in you are.
Uh-huh.
So if you're zoomed in like super close, then there's going to be more accurate. You kind of lose the forest for the trees.
Right.
Sometimes. So, okay. So here's a good reason why we zoomed in and found another problem. So that's not a crossfade. That's two splits. So let's fix that right away. Go into preferences again. And that is
editing
that's
something.
The first. Where is it?
Or fades and crossfades.
It's not that one. I think it's up a bit. Preferences project. Media item defaults. Yeah, that one. So turn off that first one. Turn on the second one. And so I would change that to, instead of 10 milliseconds, I would change it to 0.5 for a 5 millisecond. And you can change the default fade shape.
Okay, yeah. For me, this would be 7, which is I spent like 4 days figuring out that number. So,
okay, there's something else in there that I usually turn off, but yeah. So there's your crossfade.
What's the other one?
So there's all these loop source for imported items, for media items. I turn all those off.
I agree with that.
I see some really weird edits when I open up people's projects where they've slipped something and it's looped back the beginning of the item.
Oh gosh. That I already want to vomit. Yeah, no.
Turn on trim contents behind media items when editing.
The
last option there.
And what is that?
So that's essentially where if you drag, let's say you have an item and there's an item before it and you drag the right edge of the left item over top of the middle item, and then let go and then pull it back, is that original item going to be like now kind of truncated, so where you've dragged over the other item, or is it going to go back to the original position? Well, I guess it's going to crossfade, but
trim content behind me. Yeah, is what editing I see.
so it's for overlapping items,
So
really. So it's going to automatically crossfade there, but actually, if we turn off crossfades in the main toolbar, that's the that one, and drag that left item over top of that. No, they're both selected.
Oh, I see.
Okay, so there, and then pull it back to where it was. So now it's trimmed the item that it's overlapped.
So it's like a haircut machine.
Yeah. So I mean, it's kind of a minor detail, but that's something that most DAWs will do without you realizing.
For me, I would not want that. I would want it to always do either this.
Well, right now that they're mixed, you're actually gonna hear both,
and that's fine.
Okay,
I would want that.
To me, that's really ugly.
Okay,
looking. But yeah, okay, yeah. So that's what that option does.
But I'm glad to know that is there.
Yeah, there's another thing. It's actually in project settings. So that's in file menu, project settings. I think it's the advanced tab. And so enclosed items replace enclosing items. Yeah, so you saw there that how the items were overlapped. You can see both waveforms at once. There is the option items always mix, and that will play both of them at the same time. But if that first one is on, the first default option there is on, then only like the top one is going to play.
Oh.
So items always mixes, that's a very specific workflow that needs that, in my opinion. Because we have infinite tracks. We can have multiple items on single tracks using free item position.
I'm trying to think of what happens in Cubase. I think it is this, the way this is set. Yeah. Which is, so if it's like this, and then you don't have this, or this, and then you did that. So which one would play? The left one or the right one? Or both of them would play?
The right one would play.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, I think anything later in time takes the priority.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Options menu has some other things you might want to check. Whew. So there's auto crossfade media items when editing. So that's the same as that the button on the left side of the main toolbar. Trim content behind media items when editing. You wanted that off. Sorry.
Yeah.
There is show all takes in lanes when room. That's more for recording multiple takes, whether you want them to show in layers. Like, I think you're used to that. But it gets messy. So that's where the option is if you want to hide those and show only the active take.
Okay.
Then there's show overlapping media and items in lanes. Some people like this, where if you have items split, they're automatically going to kind of shrink and have their own space on the track. We can just turn that on so you can see what that's like. So,
hell no.
I know. Not a fan of that either. But I mean, maybe sometimes that's a helpful thing to why is there a glitch here and you actually have an item in the background?
Troubleshooting, yeah.
Yeah. So if we're doing drum editing or any sort of grouped editing, you want to have grouping on, but you also want the items to be selected because not all actions will apply to all the grouped items if they're not selected. So if you right click on the group button in the main toolbar, which is the second button on that one there, Selecting one item selects groups. That's a good one to have on all the time. Just so that if you have items that are grouped, you can select two or more items, press Command G, and that will group them.
How can I move
Press
this?
Option D to close the dock. Or no?
Nope, that's probably duplicate for me.
Okay, undo. Yeah, it's I think maybe it's just D, or maybe it's just M. Nope, D is down.
Oh
Split.
shit.
Trying to remember what the default is. I think it's M to show and hide the mixer.
Nope, that did a marker.
Did a marker. Okay. Okay, you can hit the view menu. Mixer is Command M.
Okay.
And yeah, okay, so
holy crap, what did I do here?
just undo a bunch of times, I guess.
Okay.
Oh, you made a folder, so you're seeing all the items within the folder.
I see. So if I wanted to group
you can
this,
see the waveforms kind of stacked.
right? Yeah. So this, then group, and then click one of them. Boom.
Yeah.
So then
exactly.
if I,
so it's really simple, but it just kind of makes sure that you don't end up editing something outside of the group when grouping is enabled.
Yeah.
So
cool. That works exactly as expected right there.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Minus the crossfades, but whatever. There's one other thing, and it's more of a navigational thing, just so we can kind of get all the way through navigation.
Sure.
So in Cubase, now this is going to kind of go against something we did earlier where we said we just press Z and it undoes. I would not have it set that way if it were me. I would have Z. So I have Z and Shift Z. So I'm going to try to think this through. So if I press Z, what happens? It's all about track height. So there's different track heights. There's one where they all go really small. Then there's one where the current one that's selected gets as big as the entire screen. And then there's one that will set all of them the exact same height. So press Z would get really big. Press Z again, they would all go very small. And then Shift Z would do the default track height for all tracks.
We can set up toggles pretty easily. There may be an action that does all that. There is an action kind of by default. I think it's the tilde key. It's the one below escape on the keyboard. So that's going to...
Okay, that's exactly like Z for me.
Okay, so it's going to take the selected item or selected track and make it...
okay. So tilde and Shift tilde is like me with Z and Shift Z.
Yeah, so there you go. Yeah, but if you want like one key to do multiple things, there's ways to do it. A little more advanced, not really beginner stuff, but
yeah.
But yeah, a lot of times specific needs require like specialized tools like that. But it's awesome that we can do that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of DAWs that just won't necessarily allow any of that kind of customization. I don't think Pro Tools whatsoever.
No, they don't.
No.
They have like different keyboard modes, depending on what has focus for single letter keyboard shortcuts. And that can be turned on and off, but that's it. You can't change one letter or, one key to do something else without third-party software, which really sucks. Okay, so some basic stuff we should get back to just to make sure that everything's in order. So if you open up project settings, which I think is option return by default, or actually it's unassigned by default, isn't it?
Yeah, and I don't have I do have a return key.
Yeah. So media page. So, okay, so the top path is where files for this project are going to be saved. By default, it's empty. So we usually don't want to choose a specific folder because then then we'd have to choose a different folder for each project. We can kind of just set up a default here, just call it audio files or call it media or whatever, or just audio. You just type in the name and it'll make a new folder wherever your project is saved.
Oh, okay.
So, and then we can save this as default, and we'll do that for every project. There are other settings here. So like format for glue, freeze, stuff like that. We could change that if we want. So automatic is probably going to do 32-bit waves. We could set that to match the recording format. Default for project region render, yeah, we probably want that to be 24-bit PCM. Yeah, so that's all fine. And yeah, and I would probably write the broadcast wave stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
That's all pretty straightforward stuff, but it's not totally set up the way that most people would expect, I think.
Yeah.
But like, you know, where it says audio format for new recordings, wave, you could set that to other formats. Like you could record right to FLAC files if you wanted to. But wave is, you know, that wave is going to work everywhere.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Would recommend that. In project settings, there's some important stuff. So like project sample rate, if you want this project to change your audio device driver to a different sample rate, or just in general, you want to have your project match your media, because Reaper's going to resample it on the fly. It doesn't convert the files automatically.
So that takes up a lot of processing power.
Yeah, it can take a lot of processing. If you have your project at 44.1, your files are 96K, it's going to have to do a lot of processing to get those out to you. And so, yeah, you just change that to the sample rate. Project BPM, that number there is going to be like your default setting for the project. I pretty much ignore that, and I just put in the markers, or I use the transport bar. See down at the bottom of your screen where it says stopped and then BPM 135. Yeah, so I usually use that. But and it's going to default to 120, but here where it says project BPM 135, you know, that's just kind of the starting point. You can always change it. You can always insert tempo changes, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's just whatever you want your default template to be, kind of. Time base for items.
I was just going to make a little note here. This setting that says force project tempo time signature changes to occur on whole samples. That's the way Pro Tools behaves and when it's turned on. And then when this is turned off is the way Cubase behaves.
Yeah, it's often it doesn't matter, but it's really like when you're duplicating items and or copying pasting things like 100 times and you start to notice that they start to drift off the grid. Mm-hmm. It's just because time, the time and the number of samples doesn't evenly divide.
Yeah.
So, or the number of ticks in the math sucks for it. But yes. Yeah, it's a rare sort of thing, but it's important. But if you have OCD and you don't like seeing like 120.1 BPM, don't turn this on.
This is me.
Yeah. So yeah, I usually have it off, but it can be a very important thing to have on. So there's the time base for items, envelopes, and markers. These three settings are pretty important, but they can be changed at any time. And these basically affect what happens when you change the tempo of the song. So if you have it on time, then they're going to just stay in their original position as you change the tempo, and then they'll either be in time or not. With beats, position, length, rate, if they were, let's say they started in time and you change the BPM, they're going to shrink or expand and stay in the original position in the bars and beats grid, and they'll play faster or slower. MIDI always follows that unless you override it separately. Beats position only will keep the same play rate for the items but change their starting position. So that's really good if you have like one-shot samples on the grid and you need them to stay, in their bars and beats grid position, but you want to hear them at different tempos without changing their audio quality. That's a good thing. And you can always change this at any time to accommodate what you're doing. So like often if you're just recording music with real guitars and stuff, keep it on time. If you are doing a mix of MIDI and stuff like that, you might want to have those other options. Working with loops, position, length, rate can be really helpful.
Can you do this per track?
You can do it per track and per item as well.
Okay.
Which gets complicated, yeah. But
yeah, and I mean, I've done a lot of work, and I know there are times where I want one thing to consider, the tempo of what's going on, and there's another thing where I'm just like, I want this to always sound how it sounds. Like maybe it's an explosion. I don't want the explosion to like, get longer or shorter based on changing tempos and times and stuff. So I would make
setting this time base to time is good if you want to, let's say you record a scratch track and you don't know the tempo and you want to find the tempo. You can't start putting in tempo changes as you're analyzing the tempo without it stretching when it's on these other settings. So you have to have it on time. And there's the other one there for time signature envelope. So beats makes sense because it's bars and beats grid we're talking about.
Right.
Project start time is if you want to have an offset. If you want to have like 10 bars before 0, you could, let's say if you hit that set 0 to edit cursor, it's going to set bar 17.4 to 0.
Yeah.
And then project start measure, you can just type in the number as well. I never mess with that personally. I just kind of got in the habit of like starting recording at bar 11 instead of bar 1.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's saved a lot of problems for me. And then there's the playback resample rate. This really only affects whether if you have files that don't match the project sample rate and the type of resample math that it has to do in real time to get that out to you. So yeah, all of these improved quality over the past year, I think it was. So the HQ mode used to be extreme, and now there's an extreme HQ mode. So all of them kind of bumped up in quality. Yeah, and yeah, render resample mode, you want that to be high, and playback, you want that to be a fairly low one. Or put them the same if you want your audio to always be the same. Maybe there's no surprises, but there is a huge difference in CPU load.
Yeah, and so if you want your session to be real snappy, in your editing, maybe you want is low, or let's see, lowest would be fast.
Yeah, there's different types of things. So yeah, it's a tricky thing. I think I have it on good usually.
Okay. Yeah, if you're mixing, you're going to want this higher than normal, and if you're editing, you're going to want to lower. And that's only if you really are getting into a situation where there's so much going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just when those files don't match the project rate.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and then there's the pitch shift parameters. If you want to do pitch and time shifting, there's lots of different settings there. These will affect all of the items in the project. So if you've already like stretched items, you can go through these and hear the differences, or you can set it. I think you can set it per track, but definitely per item. You can also change these settings. So I mean, I put it on the default most of the time,
which is
Elastic 3.323 Pro and normal setting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Sometimes if I'm doing drums, I'll put it on synchronized. I think that sounds a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
But for voices, the normal sounds the best. I did a big video on comparing all the different ones, and at the end of that, I pretty much liked the default most. None of them, they all kind of sound bad when you're really listening for it. But I think that one was kind of the most passable in most situations.
Cool.
Um,
I'll try and
in
link to
the,
that video too.
yeah, in the advanced tab here, there is some options that might be of interest. Allows feedback routing. Um, it's it it's rare that you need it, but if you want to make feedback loops to make custom delays and things like that, custom delays with like pitch shifting inside of the feedback loop, you need that on. Project length limit, so you can make it automatically stop. It also will affect the how far you can zoom out. So it's so if you have this on 10 minutes, you can only zoom out to 10 minutes plus a little bit, like I think it's 20%. So, and when you were zooming out with the mouse, we went up to like bars 70,000 or something like that. If you set a time limit, it will only go out a certain amount.
There we go.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I like that.
So, yeah. So, like if you're regularly recording for 15 minutes, maybe set your project limit to 20 minutes or something like that.
Uh-huh.
And then, yeah. So what is that? Is that 10 hours?
It's at 10 minutes, I believe. Or maybe that is 10 hours. I don't know. This song isn't very long. This song is 1 minute long.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I'm zooming out all the way right now.
Okay. So it's, yeah. So that's third.
Wait, maybe it does let
You
me
can
go.
still scroll after you zoom out.
Okay.
Yeah, you can still scroll, but if you just zoom out, it should
That makes
kind of
sense.
stop. Yeah. So if you set it to 10 minutes, it's going to zoom out to about 13 minutes.
Cool. That's good for me.
Yeah, just be aware if you want to record for longer than 10 minutes, then it's going to stop automatically there. So it's
Yeah.
something to be aware of.
If you're podcasting, you definitely want to have this off.
Yeah. Yeah, and then pan law. I don't know how much you mess around with that in
I do
Cubase.
equal power, if that's even a thing on here. So that would be, I think, probably 0 with gain compensation, maybe.
I'm not sure. I keep mine on default because I've only pretty much run into problems anytime I've changed it. And for so like a lot of people like -3 with I think with gain compensation. There's really only for it really makes a difference with pan automation. I think, but otherwise you're just going to compensate with the fader levels
Yeah.
anyways. So and the main thing that you run into here is if you have a folder inside of a folder, then you're going to get, if you have this on -3, you're going to get a 6 dB drop. So keep your folders on a 0 dB pan law for no volume changes at all. But otherwise, yeah, you can have individual tracks, anything you want. But for me, it becomes a problem to remember to change all these settings for each track. So I just leave it on default.
Yeah.
No problems. For pan mode, there's some interesting options here. Dual pan, stereo pan, or stereo balance mono pan. I like stereo pan. That gives me a balance control plus a width control. So yeah. So for stereo tracks, you can make it mono or invert the stereo panning.
So if you do width at negative 100%, that would be an inversion.
Yeah, flipping the left and right.
And then at 0 width, does that make it mono?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and then 100% is going to be left on the left, right on the right.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. That's a cool.
And you
cool
can
set.
change them. Yeah, a lot of times I'm automating the width in a mix. So I've got like my verses maybe a little bit narrower, and then maybe my verses are 50% width on the guitar bus, and then when it goes to the chorus, bring it up to 100, and it's a little bit more impact. Dual pan is separate left and right pan knobs.
Yeah.
Or depending on the theme, you have sliders and things like that.
Yeah.
So again, like if you double click those, they'll both, if you double click on both of those, it'll go to mono.
Yeah.
Or you could invert them. You know, whatever you're used to. This is more like the Pro Tools way, having separate ones.
Yeah. Cool.
And yeah, the default stereo balance mono pan that's just a single knob. So you can't change like the position of the second channel.
Yeah. So like for drums, you can only, if you're panning to the right here, this is a stereo drum track. You're not able to keep the left channel as loud.
Yeah, it would turn down the left channel.
Yeah, so you're just stuck with kind of limited control over the two channels there with that way.
Yeah.
So stereo
I
pan
mean,
is pretty cool.
Yeah, I really like that. And you can save those settings to default. You can make up a default template as well.
Yeah.
So like every time you start a project, it could have like a certain number of tracks with different names that you choose. You know, you could start off with a, you know, custom metronome, those sorts of things as well. More than just setting these settings in project settings. So these, when you hit that save as default project settings, new projects are going to have all these settings. But it's not going to change any other projects you already have saved.
Okay.
That's something to keep in mind, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's it for that one. If you open up the project folder for this, you'll see that the audio files folder is created.
Yep, there it is.
Yeah. So the audio files haven't been copied there because they were recorded before we created the audio files folder.
Yeah.
Right. So when we look at it, it's empty. So I'll show you a way to move those over or copy them over.
Okay.
So
would I do it in Reaper or is it in Finder?
Yeah, do it in Reaper. So just keep this open. We go to the View menu, and we go to Project Media / Effects Bay. And this is kind of similar to Cubase's Media Bay, where we have our source files, media items, effects. This is kind of just another way of viewing all the contents of this project.
Okay.
So source media is all the original media files, not any of the files that are used in this project, not our individual edits, which would be showed in the media items tab. So if, you know, where we have multiple items and anytime we have an edit, we would see a separate media item here. We also have groups and effects parameters and effects and all that kind of stuff shown here. But on the source page, we can, on the right column, we see the path of where those are saved to.
Yeah.
So those are in the downloads folder. We can select those items, right click, and we have move / copy file, and we can either move it or copy it to the project media directory. And so if you're using these files in another project, you might not want to move them.
Just copy, yeah.
Yeah, just copy it. So go ahead, do that. That will update all of your project files and go over to the audio files folder, and there, all of those files are there. Peak files are something that can be very annoying. Those files there. Essentially, it's just a way for Reaper to quickly read the waveforms of our audio without going into the actual, like opening the actual file and doing it, like kind of decoding it in real time. So those files can be organized in another way. So by default, there's going to be a peak file beside each of the files that are ever opened in Reaper, whether it's recording a file, importing a file, or auditioning it in the Media Explorer. So we'll go into preferences and change that so that they all go to one temporary folder. So that's on the paths thing, I think. general paths, I think. So yeah, you already set up a temporary folder. You just didn't enable that path. So just click that box there. So it'll be like Macintosh HD / temp / Joey's music / repeaks. And so all those, from now on, any peak file that we Reaper creates is going to be saved there. We then also need to go to I believe it's the media item defaults. Is it? No. Preferences media. Yeah, so store peak caches in alternate path if unable to write to project media directory. Okay, so yeah, so that just makes sure that those get put the right place.
Okay.
That makes sense. It's clutter, and they're temporary files. If you deleted those and then open the project again, it would just create them again.
So it's keeping the current thing in RAM right now, yeah?
I think it's automatically created them and put them in the other folder. If you want
that quick.
Yeah, I saw a little peaks window pop up. But yeah, it gets really messy if you just leave those on default. I've seen some people like realize that they're a thing after like 5 years of use.
Yeah.
Oh, I just cleaned up 10 gigs of peak files. I actually set mine up to with an automator script on the Mac to scan my temp folder for anything that's older than 10 days, and then it moves it to the trash.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it so yeah, my temp folder gets managed automatically.
That's awesome.
The other thing we should probably check, and I guess the last thing before we go, is auto backups. And auto backups, no one ever thinks about it until it's too late. But if we go into preferences, and what is it? General?
Or is it project?
Project. Preferences project. So we've got when overwriting project file, rename old project to RPP back. So that means that anytime you save your project, you're going to have the previous version in the same project folder. And it will just be renamed to -back. So your last save is always, your current save and your last save are always in your project folder. Then, yeah, let's have a look at that. So we've got BaseForge project -back. That's the last time you saved.
And then if I save now,
it's going to update both of those projects there.
Okay. And then whenever it does its own save that you didn't initiate, but you put it on an automatic timer here, right?
Yeah. It's going to go to, we're going to put it into another folder. And these auto backups are mostly used, I shouldn't say always used, or never needed, but in most situations, you only need these if Reaper crashes, right?
Your power goes out.
Yeah. So if you can manually save and it's successful, then you don't need the auto backup. But yeah, this is really just if a plugin crashes Reaper and you hadn't saved in a little while, then this is kind of your in-between stuff. So we're going to set this to, I like every 5 or 6 minutes when you're not recording yet. And then we're going to save this to a timestamp file in an additional directory. And we can save this to your temp folder. I would probably save this right beside your peaks temp folder.
What was that? Do you remember?
It was temp Joey's music / backups.
Okay.
Yeah, so we can hit apply there.
Can we keep the undo history, or does that get too crazy?
I've never needed the undo history personally.
It's cool that that's available though.
Yeah, in 10 years of using Reaper, I've never needed it. So maybe for debugging or something like that, but I don't know.
Cool.
It's one of those things that it's cool. It's cool because you can, but do you need it? Don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, so also I mentioned earlier creating a template. So if you just wanted to set up a project, like an empty project, how you always like to start your songs, that's also on this preference page up at the top. So you save a project, put it into the templates folder, and then you can click on browse here and pick it from the templates folder. And then anytime you start a new project in Reaper, it's going to load that project with all your settings, all your track names, with anything in the project settings page already set up.
Cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
So so with these settings, this is very much like a Cubase or Pro Tools or Logic sort of setup, and a lot of the stuff is off by default. But now I think, like, now that I've shown you like the mouse modifiers, the action list, the options menu, like you're pretty much good to go on your own, I would say. Yeah, just start editing, start recording, and then send me a message if you run into any more roadblocks.
Cool. I back it. Although I did just I don't know what just happened there. My
So
repeat.
right there, the peaks files decided to disappear,
Yeah.
which means that uh,
Just gonna open it.
so because we
again.
deleted those files, now it's not reading them.
Yeah.
So that's in the item menu, I think. Peaks.
Rebuild all peaks.
Yeah.
Boom. And then they're gonna be not in this folder now, but they're in that other folder that we made. Cool.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, this is awesome. Thanks for your time. Thanks for holding my hand through the process.
Yeah, my pleasure. I do lots of these sorts of one-on-one lessons, and anyone can contact me. I have a calendar that anyone can just see my availability and pick a time, day and time to do a lesson with me. These are $50 per hour, and I've done a whole bunch of these and really helped people get past that initial learning curve, as well as like optimizing workflow. I've worked with people pretty much in all industries on this stuff as well. So yeah,
that's great.
We'll really happy to do this sort of these one-on-one lessons with people.
Yeah, and we'll leave a link to this in the description. So when if you guys are watching this video, click on that, schedule time with John, and he'll hook you up. Thanks for hooking me up. I feel like I can actually use this more now, which, I find it incredibly convenient to just open Reaper whenever I need to open it. Like, earlier on this call, we didn't record this part, but I was like digging around for this little thing to open Cubase, and I can't actually plug it into my laptop right now because I have a webcam and a microphone plugged in, and there's only 2 USB ports. So perfect reason to just open up Reaper. It's that simple. But yeah,
with the small download size, you can download an update and launch it before the download completes on anything else. You could be like, you could be recording before anyone has even like finished opening Pro Tools and scanned its plugins.
Yeah.
So, all that kind of stuff. It's an amazing piece of software. It's not perfect. But it's really just amazing, and it can be so many things to so many people. Like, I use it for all my video editing. Not just the audio part, but the actual videos, adding titles and transitions, all that kind of stuff. For me, on my systems, it works better than Premiere Pro. Don't know why, but it does. And that plus being able to run projects like that, plus being able to customize my own workflow, creating custom actions, creating scripts, being able to customize the appearance of all that. You can't do that in other software. So it's for me, it's just the best.
I love it. I'm trying to convert. So we'll see.
Yeah, Cubase is great as well. It's hard to fault something that's lasted that long. Cubase is a good piece of software. but it's not the right piece of software for everyone. So for me, it wasn't. And well, yeah, I think Reaper can be for anyone, but not maybe not for everyone. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally agree with that. Well,
All right.
thanks guys for watching this video. If you like it, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, all those good things that we all say at the end of our videos. I'll catch you guys soon. And John, thanks again for joining me.
See ya.
See you guys.